Williams. That's a long name. Did I get that right?
You nailed it.
Okay, awesome. And comedian extraordinaire?
Extraordinaire in many ways, yes.
Fabulous. All right, so thank you for talking to me today. I am super curious. Over the last couple of years, I will confess, I've started to try to study comedy in tiny little bits.
Okay.
I wanted to, as a therapist, try to put out there in the world psychotherapy, little things that are more digestible, and try to use humor. So
Humor is a great vehicle for that.
Yeah, and I feel like humor can heal when we're in the right space, or at least open us up to listening to things that maybe we wouldn't normally.
Yeah.
Such a touchy subject on psychology because it's so sensitive too. I'm excited to pick your brain today. Oh, first I should promote. You have a big show coming up. What is your show?
My half hour on Comedy Central is premiering November 15th at 11:30 p.m. on both coasts. Please watch it. I really need you all to help me have a career.
So it's on Comedy Central?
It's on Comedy Central, yes.
Okay, fantastic. And if we don't catch it live, we'll be recorded.
It'll be on the app, it'll be online, and I think that there'll even be a grace period where you can watch it without, if you don't even have cable or whatever. I think there'll be a thing for that too.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. I can't wait to see
and
it.
If you're really hard up, it's just $30. I will come to you personally and do the whole half hour.
That's fantastic. Wow. Can you imagine getting all the phone calls? All right. So what's funny to you? What makes something funny?
A lot of what is funny, well, I was thinking about this in preparation of our talk, and I think that there's two basic things that make something funny. Something is funny if you get it and you can relate to it, or something is funny if you didn't see it coming. If you broke all of humor down into whatever it is with physics or chemistry, like neutrons and protons, it would be something that you can relate to and that you understand, or something that you never saw coming and it's a total curveball. I think that's basically what makes something funny.
And so for you, when you're in your daily life, where do you pull that from?
That's a funny question. I think most comedians do. Definitely what I do. Something's happening, and you sort of in the moment say something, and you realize, oh, okay, that was funny. You write it down. A lot of it is, I think, sort of in the moment.
You're noticing the process about what's going on, and you're calling it as you see it, right?
Yeah. Doing an interview like this is very interesting because I feel like pontificating too much about comedy is almost well, there's a term for it. It's not dissecting a frog. It's or it's something like that. Or no, it is. I think it's dissecting a frog. It's the more you get into it, the less funny it is. A frog is funny when it's jumping around. Once you start cutting it up, it's gross and no one cares. I do think there's something there to be okay, this person just spilled their guts to me for some reason, and it's not against the law to make a joke. I think about it a lot as if you're out to dinner and if you genuinely ask the server or waiter, how are you? How is your day going? Something very simple. You can tell that they light up and respond naturally because a lot of people don't do that. Yeah. And so I kind of feel with comedy, especially once you are a quote unquote comedian and you're known for being funny, I try to be funny in with my Lyft driver, at the airport, with everyone, because it's oh, these little bits of humor can make someone's day. And that might be the thing that at the end of their day, they go home and they say, you know what happened to me today? This guy was in the elevator with me, blah, blah. And so I kind of think okay, well, if I can kind of do that, and it doesn't work all the time, I'll tell you that, but you can still bomb in public off stage. But I think for the most part, you can I don't know, you can bring some brightness to someone's day. And then also you're I'm oh, I'm staying sharp. I'm honing my tools or whatever.
Yeah, but if it's a muscle and you keep on practicing it and you're giving a gift along the way.
You have to. I mean, just tonight I had a show that went fine, but I hadn't been on stage in maybe a week and a half, maybe longer. And I felt rusty, and I felt like I was like, oh, I wish that I had been up more or gone to open mics or whatever, because then I would have been a little bit more fluid and loose and smooth. And maybe the audience doesn't notice it, but you notice it.
And I think it's anything. I think, well, you're spreading an energy, and it's like, okay, this is my energy. I mean, could I say that? Like, here's your energy is like
Oh
fun.
yeah, I think a lot of it is that. A lot of it's confidence, energy, like whatever you want to call that thing. It's like, here's what I have. Let me give it to you.
So when you were a kid, if you don't mind me getting personal, were you always funny, or did you develop this, or?
I think I was always kind of funny. I think that the question you get a lot is, were you the class clown? And I don't think I was the class clown, but I think I was a smart ass, I guess. And I was like friends with the class clown. I'd be like, hey, you should like do this. Like kind of like that. When you're a comedian, you forget a lot of times that other people aren't naturally funny. I approach almost every single situation that happens to me in my entire life with, how can I make a joke out of this?
Yes.
How can I laugh at it? Because, a lot of stuff's rough and you want to laugh at it, and it's kind of a power thing or whatever. Maybe even before I was doing comedy, I knowingly did it, and now it's like second nature. Now it's just something that it's like, yes, this is the way I interact with the world. This is the way, like, in the same way that like a sommelier like takes in senses and of the wine. I'm always looking for the joke. I'm always trying to like see what's funny about something.
And the same thing with me when I went to graduate school. It's like, okay, I see everything from people's feelings, and I could see how, okay, now I'm going to see where are the incongruencies of life.
I always think about that and I have an interest I'm in therapy. I have an interest in psychology. I think about that more than anything, about how counselors and therapists and psychologists like go through the world. Like, are you just constantly like, do you have like a bad interaction with like a flight attendant, and you're like, oh, well, that must be because of their mother or something like that?
No, I have to say, in graduate school, like, oh, graduate students are just the worst. And I was up there too. It's like I diagnosed myself with everything, and I saw everything, and I would tell everybody every theory. And then you get in, for me, I got in the field and doing the work, and I get a new client and I'm scared, and I think there's something good about that.
Yeah, there is something good about that. Because I feel like if you're ever at the point where you feel like you do know everything and understand everything, those are the people that are, excuse me, more full of shit than anyone else. And I feel like comedians have this a lot. I feel like probably everyone in the entertainment industry has this a little bit. That imposter syndrome thing is very real. And it's only been actually the last festival I went to, and this festival in August or September was the first time I looked around at like an after party, and I was like, oh, I'm not scared of anyone. I don't feel like I shouldn't be here. And because that is a thing that goes with you for a long time. And that's the thing I think about a lot too. I'm like, I'm sure this is just like any other industry in a lot of ways, but especially something where you're supposed to be somewhat of an expert, it's like, oh, but I lost my keys today.
Do you ever have that bit where, because you're constantly creating, do you ever fear that bit that you're not going to have that?
Yes. Yes. I mean, especially right now with my half hour on Comedy Central that airs November 15th at 11:30 p.m.
Nice.
I am completely agonizing over, what am I going to do once that airs? Am I going to be able to write more? Am I ever going to have 30 minutes again, et cetera, et cetera? You just keep going. I mean, it's like, one thing that I've tried to do recently is accept the fact that I worry and have anxiety and have some neuroses here and there, because what else are you gonna do? Like, I'm still gonna try to do it, and I just have to be like, okay, well, there's that little voice in my head worrying about it, but I logically, I know I've worried about that exact thing before, and I know that I've overcame it. And it's one of those things too, where it's like a lot of it is external factors. Like I'm funny, I wrote my jokes, I practiced, I auditioned, I got this half hour, but someone else had to be the person that said like, okay, yes, we'll give this to you. And I think about that a lot, where it's like, yeah, you can worry as much as you want and you can do as much as you want, but in a way that is both frustrating and not relieving, maybe a little bit relieving. It's at a certain point, it's out of your hands.
Yeah.
At a certain point, there's nothing you can do. And it is, one of those things where that's what makes it both tragic and magic at some points. I think that the comedy community is one of the strongest and proudest, and also pretty funny.
That's good. That's good that they're pretty funny.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of thinking off the top of my head, which is a little scary of a thing to do. But like I read something a while ago about people bonding when there's a little bit of adrenaline,
Sure.
corporate things. So I wonder if there's a part where you've got this, I don't know what it's like for you to be on stage, but like a little bit of adrenaline going. Therefore, you guys have this shared experience, this shared collective emotional
Oh
experience.
yeah.
We're going through this and adrenaline going, so it builds that kind of community.
Right. And also it's very you versus the world in a microcosm. Like if you get off stage and you had a good set and someone else has a good set, it's very easy to like grab each other's shoulders and be like, we made it through, like we did it. It's a lot of trial by fire stuff for sure. And the adrenaline is, and this is a community with a lot of, your office is usually a bar. You're usually getting paid in drinks. There's usually, substances. And the one that always wins is that big laugh and that adrenaline you get from it. It's something that every comic is beholden to in some way.
For you to keep going, like how did you have that mindset? I'm getting back to like the blinders, because I could just see myself of like, I'm giving up. Like,
oh, I've quit comedy about 7 times. There's some of it where it's like, what else am I gonna do? And I do think that it's okay to take breaks from things, even if they're something you love and your dream. I feel like the first few iterations of that up and down are very difficult, and they were very difficult for me. I've been through one already. And I feel like maybe the whole trick of it is to have that faith and that trust that even if you're on a downswing, good moments can still come. And so that's the thing too, where it's like you can never get too inflated, you can never get too down. You have to always kind of have this love of doing it, which is very hard to maintain over I don't know how people do it. I've been doing it 10 years and I'm like, I'm done.
but you're speaking, I'm so impressed though. I really am, Alan, because you're speaking with such wisdom of like, okay, like I've been in it, I'm now straddling it. I've, feel like there's
I'm a big straddler.
all right. All right. So, but you have this wisdom of you've gained some confidence, like you're not just fresh out of the gate.
Sure.
And, I think with anything, it's like, okay, we can only get that confidence, some confidence by having some like moment of success or actually doing it.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, we've gotten that, but you've also like humbled yourself and realized like it's an interesting profession where you still, like someone like Dave Chappelle doesn't have to, but does like kind of humble himself down to there. Like you don't see somebody who's, you don't see a big basketball player going and playing high school basketball,
Right.
So it's interesting.
But I bet in some ways you do. I bet in some ways those people are connecting with the love of the game in a way that is divorced from money and pressure and fame. I bet that they are playing pickup games with their friends and like, their kids and maybe their kids' friends or something in a way that is more pure of spirit. One of the things, and I'm sure this is different, I'm sure this is similar to acting or other musicians, other things, where it's like once the thing that you've worked various jobs to afford yourself to live while you pursue becomes the breadwinner,
Mm-hmm.
then it's like, oh, now this is a job. Mm-hmm. And it's like the whole time I didn't want a job. And now this is like, it's not digging ditches, but it's like, it's a lot of work, and there's a dance to it, and I mean, dealing with Hollywood and agents and the entertainment business and all that stuff, it's confusing and it's scary, and you don't know who to trust. And especially if you're someone who maybe could be taken advantage of, or is a little Pollyanna or whatever, like it could be potentially not just debilitating to your career, but to your sense of identity and your personhood. And so it's like it is a minefield in a way, which is why it's like you kind of feel like you're always sort of tap dancing around it, because you don't you like I a lot of this stuff, it's like you don't know what the right decision is. You don't know who the right person is to work with, or what the right script is to write, or who the right person is to go to for an ask. A lot of it is a gamble, and that's scary, you know.
Yeah, and I wonder if, God, I could just really see that. There's so much, and I don't know why it is with artists. Like why, like just sort of fishy. But I could see that even more so with comedy. And you're being so vulnerable, not only on stage, but just with your career and who you connect with. And so it's just admirable in a way when you look at it that way. What is it like with comedians and drinking? Because I got to imagine, or drugs, stepping on stage to deal with that stage fright, or being paid with alcohol, or just the personalities, because just like self-medicating.
Yeah,
Can you expand on what that's like?
like there are tons of sober comedians, because there are more drunk, alcoholic, addict comedians, like a lot. And I think that there's kind of a very similar common sense thing going on, which is location, location, location. Like the shows are happening in bars,
Mm.
and you're a little nervous, and you want a little something,
Mm.
and the whole crowd's drinking, and you want to be like the crowd. Um, and then there are people that can do it well, and there are people that cannot do it well, and there are people who slur on stage, and that's part of the act. And this happens in romantic relationships and workplace relationships too. But I do feel like comedy gets a really big pass of like, oh hey, they're funny. Like they're funny with that drink in their hand. But yeah, I mean, I would almost imagine it's like any other artistic endeavor, where it's sort of like part of the mythology.
Yeah.
It's kind of a thing where it's just like drinking, drugs, it's very much there. It's part of the culture. Um, it's a part of a lot of material.
Mm.
It's a part of a lot of the culture, just the way you live your life. Um, we're mostly all night owls.
Mm.
Um, but then there's also comedians that are very sort of workman uh, about it, like that. And again, I do think that a lot of it is like, a lot of people drank and did a lot, and now they're sober, and like they now maybe comedy is like their outlet for all of that they used to do.
Mm.
So it really runs the gamut. It's obviously part, like it feels, again, what it goes back to the most is the adrenaline. And it's like you have a good set, and it doesn't matter if you just had a good set earlier that night. The good set that you just had makes you want to celebrate and makes you want to enjoy it. And then someone else wants to do that too. And then the flip side is, oh, you had a bad set? Well, hey, let me buy you a drink. Like, let's talk about it. Let's nurse it a little bit. So it's one of those things that you do have to be careful of, and you do have to be almost respectful of, because it's so, like, hey, here's $20 and a couple of drink tickets. That's pretty much like mainly how shows go. Or you're not getting paid, you're just getting paid in drinks. So it's just something to consider for sure.
Yeah, it's like pervasive. You wouldn't have that as an accountant, like walk in, like, oh, you're assistant accountant, like you have some booze. Like, we're just gonna pay you for drinks.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
absurd. It's interesting too, just as again, like the therapist in my head of like this fix, like hearing this fix, like you have a set and it feels so good. It's almost like a runner's high, or
Yes.
like a drug, like it's your cocaine. It's like, that felt so good and alive, and I want to hit that again. Or how can I hit it higher? This is an odd question, but it's one of my favorite questions. What do you wish people understood about you that maybe they do not? Or maybe they do, but you like them to know about you?
Yeah, I guess what I would say, I guess maybe I want to see this a little generally, is a lot of people, I think, when it comes to comedy, think that you roll out of bed in the morning, or you roll out of the bed at night, and you go to the show and you put a microphone in your hand, and just funny stuff starts coming out of you. And that is not the case. The case is usually that you've been working on this stuff for weeks or months or years. It's like compounded interest of a loan or a savings account or something, where it's like, no, like, yeah, I'm doing like an hour at a club and I'm getting paid whatever amount of money, and people are like, oh, that's crazy, you're getting paid that much per minute. And it's like, no. You're not getting paid that much per minute. You're getting paid for all the unpaid hours and days and weeks that you did it for the love of the game and the desire to one day the financial compensation of putting the work in. I feel like I don't know if there's anything I would say on a personal level that I would hope people understood about me specifically, but I would say as a whole, if you're watching comedy or at a show, I hope you would kind of take that into effect of like, you know what, even if I don't think this person's funny, they probably on some level worked pretty hard for this. If it's a great set, and if it seems effortless, and if it seems like it just came out of nowhere, it didn't. And that also deserves a little bit of like internal recognition as well.
I like that. I absolutely like that. Earlier, us framing, or I'll take credit with it, that this is art.
All you.
Yeah, you thought this interview was about you, but it's about me.
Oh yeah.
That this is art, and if art is, I like to think of art as it's personal taste. So okay, you're not going to like a lot of it, but there's a part of acknowledging, and I'm going to put the therapist part about compassion. Like, this person put a lot of time and effort and energy into this, and like, just sit there and notice that as another human being putting themselves, some sacrifice and thought. And I like that. And I honestly, I haven't thought of that way with comedy. I think of it as athletes. Oh, we're paying them so much money. I'm like, well, we're paying this amount of athletes ton of money, but they'll never be able to do much more afterwards. But I haven't thought of comedians that way. And
well, and I'll say this with the caveat of, I think athletes are putting their literal livelihoods on the line in some cases in a way that comedians aren't. But I do think that I'll say this about people that complain about how their sports team performs, or one of their players on their sports team performs, and then someone complaining about comedy or a show they went to. It's like, hey, you don't like it? Why don't you get out there and do it? Because I don't think you would do so hot in the same situation.
No. It's like that fantasy that a lot of people have with Olympics, that, in every swimming race, you should have one average person just swimming, just to have a comparison.
I've never heard that, but that's very funny.
Well, that's my first.
It's like cannonball into the thing. Yeah,
completely. Or even just like your regular person who swims every day. Like, they just have them out there as comparison. But that would be awesome. Like, somebody else has to stage for like 2 minutes. It's just, you think you're funny? Come on up. And then we get best look back.
What do you got?
Who are your idols in comedy?
I think that the funniest person might be like Zach Galifianakis. I think he's like very, very funny. Maria Bamford's very funny, and she's also someone that's like very clued into psychology and mental health and stuff. But Zach Galifianakis is like the reason why I started to like do comedy and like thought I could do it and stuff. So like I always go back to him as like the funniest person ever.
Oh, that's fantastic. Then as we finish up, can you tell me again when your show is, your social media stuff, where can people find you, and all that jazz?
My website is allenstricklandwilliams.com. I am on every social media. I am at Totally Allen, ALLEN, and my half hour is November 15th 11:30 p.m. on Comedy Central.